Peace and blessings. Welcome to Mental Wellness for the Culture. I am your host, Belinda Gordon Battle, owner and clinical therapist at BGB Counseling Services, located in Miami and serving the world globally. This is our opportunity to interact and engage in the path to mental wellness as a significant and essential part of our culture. This season on Mental Wellness for the Culture, I plan to speak to experts from our culture about creating and maintaining balance, resilience, surviving trauma and domestic violence, the value of sisterhood and brotherhood, self care, the aging process, and Black love. We are talking about mental wellness for the culture. Today, we have an expert that will become a part of our family, Sylvia Pauling. Sylvia Pauling is the owner of the Pauling Institute Incorporated, located in Washington, D.C. I'm so excited to have her here with us today. Welcome, Sylvia.
Hi, thanks.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and the work that you do.
Okay, so I am the owner of the Paulin Institute, where I also provide psychotherapy, counseling for families, individuals, and couples. I also provide training in the area of domestic violence and mental health.
Yeah. And a little bit more background because Sylvia is very humble. I met Sylvia Pauling many years ago, probably back in the 90s. And she is definitely one to watch, definitely a mentor and a friend and a part of the mental wellness for our entire culture. I am so grateful to have her here today. She has meant a lot to me over the years, and I want to talk to her about her projects that bring her passion. What are your passion projects right now, Sylvia?
So my passion projects are the number one passion project is a book that is going to be released later this year, and that book is it's the focus is domestic violence, but it tells the story about my sister whom I lost to domestic violence, and so that is like one of my big projects that I'm working on. And a second project that I'm working on is my dissertation, which happens to also be in the area of domestic violence, but it's looking at the perpetrator or abuser and mental health. And so that is a big um, project that I'm working on as well.
Absolutely. That is so needed in our culture that we continue to have these conversations about domestic violence. But one thing I found very unique and interesting about your passion is that you have made a decision to advocate, speak, and understand not just the victim or the survivor of domestic violence, but also the perpetrator, the abuser, the person that actually is hurting someone else in this system, in this relationship between two people. Please, just because we want to make sure everybody in our culture understands, this takes two. There are two things going on at one time. Can you talk to us a little bit more about working with perpetrators?
Yes. So one of the reasons I decided to work with the perpetrator is because I believe when we talk about domestic violence, and here today we're focusing on intimate relationships, um, and that is domestic violence is that abusive behavior, which could be physical, it could be mental, it could be someone being called out their name. It could be multiple things that are it's just toxic. But one of the things that drew me to the perpetrator is because I believe the we focus on victims and or survivors, and we're doing a great job trying to provide, trying to help them get to a place of healing. But the focus is primarily on them, but still the cause of what's going on, it's not about them. They're not the ones that are being abusive, it's not their behavior. So I thought it necessary to look at the perpetrator or the abuser or the person who is actually committing the behavior, and to look deep at that individual and then what's going on in their lives, and how do we help them change, or how do we help them get to a place where they can make a decision that they need to change and they want to change and they are committed to making those changes. So when we look at the root of the issue, the
Mhm.
root is the perpetrator.
Yeah.
And so what we know is these individuals tend to leave one relationship and
Mhm.
go to another relationship.
Yes.
And that in itself is how the cycle continues to move. And so just from a personal standpoint, when
Right.
I lost my sister to domestic violence, and I couldn't wrap my head around what happened, what did I miss, and all of
Mhm.
those things,
Mhm.
I began to kind of focus on the individual that did this to her.
Yeah.
And because it was a horrific crime, death, all of that, my thought was something happened to this individual as well. Not that I
Absolutely.
didn't think he needed to be responsible for his actions,
Mhm.
but I thought in order to change this world, we
Yeah.
gotta help, perpetrators make better choices. And
Absolutely. I agree. I agree. And it just definitely made me pause and think, because this is courageous work you're doing. Being that you lost your own sister to domestic violence, it's courageous for you to take that moment and acknowledge her and honor her by saying, let me take a step forward. Let me look at what else can be done in the field of domestic violence. So I applaud you for that. I'm so excited
thank
to
you.
be able to be in your circle and see you do this work.
Thank you.
I have worked in corrections before, and working in corrections, you do have a tendency to come into contact with perpetrators and abusers of domestic violence. But what I have not seen is that they are getting the services and the support that they need to, as you say, make those changes for themselves. So they go back out into the community, they develop new relationships, but they have the same pattern of behavior, and it
Mhm.
repeats
Yes.
over and over and over again. So I thank you so much for sharing that part of yourself and making that part of yourself available for
Thank
others so they can grow and acknowledge what is going on in our culture. Talk
you.
to me a little bit more about how we can support. When I say we, I mean families and people in the community can support someone that may be an abuser or a perpetrator.
And so let me just back up and say that the work that we do with perpetrators or the work with abusers is really hard work. It's not easy, and
Mhm.
it requires, just from a clinical standpoint, it requires like a deeper level of work. It requires us to really um, go to a deeper place with that individual as a professional, but as someone's friend, someone's family member.
Yes.
The things that we can do is one, uh, continue to inform them that their behavior is not acceptable, and to not back down from that. I think what happens is we are accustomed to oftentimes this whole saying of what goes on in their house is kind of their stuff, and we have to begin to expose individuals, but not only expose them, but to just let them know that what you're doing is not acceptable. It's disrespectful. It's
Mhm.
not honoring anyone. It doesn't make you a macho person. It doesn't make you um it's not healthy, and
Right.
we ourselves have to understand that toxic relationships are not healthy, and that no one should stay in a toxic relationship,
Yes.
and and So the answer for the community is for us to give the message that this is not acceptable. So this behavior is not acceptable. So
Yeah.
if you know your neighbor is doing something, to let them know that even when you're doing that, it might be inside your house, but you're
Hmm.
doing this to our community. It's
Yes.
not just, and especially if your children are witnessing it, you're doing this to the entire community. And I'm not going to tolerate it, or I'm not going to socialize with you, because when you come out of your home, you appear
Hmm.
totally different.
Right.
But that person is still there. And
Yeah.
so, and exposure is one of the ways that we help.
Yeah. A- Absolutely. I agree that exposure is so important. When we think about mental wellness for our culture, in our culture, we have a tendency, like you said, we keep secrets. We pretend like things are not occurring within our own family structures. We remain silent about things that are hurting people around us. And that itself creates an opportunity for balance to continue. And it does affect every member in our family, every member in our community, whether it's said or not said, it still has an effect on everyone. So I appreciate when you say bring it to the table, expose it, find a way to safely speak to the person about it and help that person get some help.
Mhm.
A few years ago, I remember speaking to someone that was an abuser, and he said to me, I just keep going until she feels like calling the police. And I said, that's interesting. I said, because in our culture at this time, we do everything we can to avoid the police.
Mhm.
And he said he never thought about it that way. He never thought about how including the police or bringing the police into his home was actually counterproductive. It was not the outcome he actually wanted. And he was able to kind of accept some responsibility and move in a different direction. But I think these conversations are so important, and I appreciate that you are a part of that discussion.
And I
Um,
think conversations like these are extremely important,
yes,
because the more we talk about it, the more we reach people. The
yes,
more we talk about this, the more the abuser, the perpetrator, the person that has this toxic behavior, the more they hear it, and they're hearing that this is not acceptable, and I am not in isolation, and
yeah,
just because I'm doing this at home and I think no one knows, that people do know
right.
what's going on. And
Hmm.
so when we have our own family members or whomever that is committing these toxic behaviors,
Hmm.
to be able to say, you need help, you need professional help, you
Yes.
need, I'm willing to support you if you get the help that you need, but
Hmm.
I'm not willing to support your toxic behavior. I'm not going to say, yes, what you're doing is right when it's wrong. And
Yes.
and it does not matter how many generations it has gone on,
Hmm.
but it has to stop
Hmm.
somewhere.
Yes, it has to stop. Generational trauma, generational abuse cannot continue. Someone has to put a stop to it. And when we are in these intimate relationships and we see these intimate relationships are toxic, it's very important that someone steps in and says, excuse me, something else is going on here. Let's put a stop to this. Let's see how we can move forward without hurting each other. There may be some love there, but love shouldn't feel so painful.
Right.
I should not be abused in my relationship. I want to go back to something you said earlier. You were given examples of abuse. You said um, emotional. I heard you say verbal, physical. I'm aware of sexual abuse. Do you mind just sharing like one or two examples of what does emotional abuse look like? What does emotional abuse sound like?
And so, just from the perspective of a survivor, emotional abuse could be something so simple, as someone looking at you a certain way. Like they may never put their hands on that survivor in public,
Yeah.
but they might look at them in a certain way, and just that look in itself,
Mhm.
they're afraid. And so emotionally it impacts them enough that they may not do or say what, it causes them to not to feel comfortable.
Right.
And so um another piece of emotional abuse or even financial abuse is
Yes.
when someone has control of your finances,
Mhm.
so much so that you cannot withdraw your own money from your
Mhm.
bank account without them knowing every 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 amount that you take out or where it's
Exactly.
going, and or the
Mhm.
details of what's being done for it. And
Yes.
then something that we tend to not, we often see like these constant contact, like someone always
Mhm.
calling you or
Right.
always texting you, or 100 texts in
Yes.
a day. That can start off, we think, oh, he
Yeah.
really cares about me and he calls me like 50 times a
Yeah.
day.
He's always
But
thinking about me.
yes, in reality, it
Yeah.
that is not healthy.
No.
And when someone starts to wanting to know like your whereabout, like
Mhm.
where did you go last night,
Mhm.
or where were you when I called you, or all of those things, we
Yes.
have a tendency to, in the beginning, we might see that as something cute,
Right.
or oh, he's really connected to me. But it is like obsessive behavior that is so unhealthy, and
Mhm.
we have to be mindful. And that's why I tell particular teenagers who get in the habit of their their boyfriend or
Yes.
girlfriend, they're constantly texting, and they got to know where they know that's too
Yes.
much.
It is.
And
It is.
that is unhealthy behavior,
Yeah.
and we all should be able to kind of take on our course throughout
Mhm.
the day. And you don't necessarily need to know where I'm at every minute, every
Right.
second, and I should feel okay with that.
With that, absolutely. I'm glad you said that because I was thinking about young people, our teenagers, but even down to our little boys and our little girls. And I'm just going to use an example of a little boy hitting and then hitting a little girl and then running off. And then we as adults, I've seen this happen so many times where the adults say, oh, he just likes her.
Mhm.
He hit her, he tapped her, and then he ran off and he just likes her. And they allowed that to happen. And to me, that is almost mimicking what we do not want to see happen. You know, if you
Exactly.
like me, don't put your hands on me. Speak
Yes.
to me and say, I like you, or here's a flower, or something else other than hitting me and then running away.
Right.
What can we do to help young people understand the boundaries that need to be in place so that we can avoid these episodes of domestic violence and toxic relationships?
So I think just as a culture, we are so accustomed to relationships.
Yeah.
It's like from very early on, and I can remember it even within my own family,
Yes.
very early on. It's like, do you have a boyfriend?
Right.
Do you have a girlfriend? Do you have, and we don't really even know ourselves.
Mhm.
And so we are kind of forcing children or young adults to get involved in relationships
Mhm.
before we get involved with ourselves.
Yes.
And so, I think it all begins with that self love, but it also begins with teaching your children that the first person you should establish a relationship with is yourself,
Mhm.
understanding and knowing and loving yourself, and understanding that you're kings and queens and all of those things. And as a culture, we kind of do the opposite. We
Mhm.
like, and so I can't tell you the countless number of people that I see
Yeah.
that believe that they have to be in a relationship to
Absolutely.
be complete.
Yes.
And so, and when I ask someone, do you love yourself? And they're like, huh? Do I
Right.
love myself? Or when was the last time that you said I love you? And do you look in the mirror and say I love you? They're like, no, or that's weird, and all. No, it's not. So it kind
Right.
of starts with understanding what is a healthy relationship,
Mhm.
but you can't understand what a healthy relationship is outside of yourself until
Yes.
you understand a healthy relationship with yourself.
Within
And
yourself.
we do really good about um self-care from the perspective of tasks like
Mhm.
pedicures, manicures, massages. We
Right.
start off really early with the little girls and taking them to get there, all of that. But we don't do enough of pouring into our children and
Mhm.
teaching them what a healthy relationship looks like, and that it's okay not to be in an intimate
Mhm.
relationship, and until you work on yourself and know who you are,
Yes.
and have developed your own values and standards and all of those things, you can't really show up in a relationship healthy.
Yes, yes. You are so right. You are so right. There's so many things that go on in our culture where we're conditioning our children. We've been conditioning ourselves that you have to be with someone. You can't be out here by yourself.
Yes,
And sometimes that someone is not healthy.
yes, yes,
Sometimes you are not healthy.
yes,
But here you are out here ready to accept this relationship as is,
yes,
and the person that you are forming a relationship with is toxic or can be an abuser for you. I read somewhere that maybe 39% of women are in violent domestic abusive behavior relationships, and about 29% of men.
yes, yes.
So we really have to get out of that mindset that we have to be in a relationship no matter what.
Right. Yeah. Because what happens is we condition people to be in isolation and continue to experience the
Mhm.
abuse, you know, to from uh, pastors telling people it's okay to stay or to pray about it, and all of those things. Those are things that are leading people to believe that what they're experiencing is okay, or for a survivor that knows this is not right, it gives this mixed message and this sense of confusion
Mhm.
that that they're at fault, or that it can be prayed away, and all of those things. And we're certainly not saying that a spiritual connection does not help us as beings, but
Yes,
it does not, because we're spiritually connected, does not mean we should stay with someone that is abusive. That
absolutely.
doesn't mean that we have to um pray about it and allow someone to be our punching bag.
That's,
No, we can pray about it and use that confidence in whomever our higher power, for me, it's God, and
yeah.
use my confidence in God to know that I don't have to stay in this situation. But until we bring messages from folks that are in higher
Mm-hmm.
positions and things like that,
Hmm.
the message becomes confusing.
Yes,
So
it
it's like,
does.
where do I belong in this whole picture?
Yeah.
And it's not only confusing for the survivor, it's confusing for the abuser as well, because
Exactly.
you're validating toxic behavior. And
Absolutely.
so, um, women that speak up, and
Hmm.
even men that speak up,
Hmm.
um, they should continue to speak up and not allow, if you're in a relationship where um, you feel like the behavior that you're experiencing or what is happening to you is unhealthy, you
Hmm.
should continue to say that it's unhealthy. And
Yes,
if there can't be, if the individual can't change, then that may not be a good relationship with you.
absolutely.
No one should have to stay in a relationship that's abusive, toxic, unhealthy, being called out of their names and all of those things. And
Right.
the ultimate form of all of that, because all of that is about control,
Yes.
is death. And
Yes.
so we have to understand that we're setting people up for consequences that can
Hmm.
be very detrimental to their lives. And so,
Absolutely.
as we look at wellness,
Hmm.
We have to begin to really start with ourselves and understand that. And so when I work with survivors, oftentimes they come wanting to fix that
Yes.
individual. And
Yes.
it's like, no, let's start with you.
Right.
Let's help
Right.
you get to a different place. Let's help
Absolutely.
you heal. And
Right.
when you heal, I guarantee you're gonna make a different
Decision.
decision.
Yes, you will. You
Yeah.
will, because you will in the process, because you have to be open to that process. I think it's so important that everybody tries therapy, even if you feel like you don't need it. I love it when people say, I don't need therapy. And I say, well, just try it. See what happens.
Yeah.
When you go talk to Sylvia Pauling, see what happens.
Yeah.
She has something to say and she's objective and she can listen to what you have to say. See what happens. 99% of the time, when I say just try it, and that person attends a session with a qualified, licensed clinical therapist of some sort, they come out of there feeling like, oh, I did have things I needed to share.
Mhm.
There are things within me I need to work on. And I think that's important when we think about our culture, that we have gone through so much violence just to be in this country. And that
Yes.
some of that continues to be perpetrated over generations. And if you just take the time and the opportunity to try therapy with someone that's open to hearing your entire story, then it will cause a change. It will cause a change in the individual, in the family, and then in our culture. I appreciate that you are a part of that change. I've always seen you as a change agent.
Thank
You
you.
are very important and valuable to this community of mental wellness. Sylvia, tell me, what are some things that you can say to our community, to our culture in closing, that we need to take with us?
And so, in closing, one, I want to just thank you, Belinda, for having me.
Of course.
And as you said, this is a beginning of many conversations.
Mhm.
But to the community, I as Belinda was kind of describing therapy, counseling, whatever you want to call when you're talking to that professional, but think of it as a conversation.
Mhm.
Think of it as and also think of it as the same type of conversation that you have with uh your primary care, your
Mhm.
doctor, that your blood pressure is up and you're trying to figure out what do I do to bring down my blood pressure, and you trust that individual. And just think of it as that is a sense of wholeness when we begin to look at our bodies, our minds, and our soul. And it's not one or the other. So it's not just prayer and no therapy, and it's not just going to the doctor and
Mhm.
no prayer, but it is a combination of
Yeah.
everything. So it takes all of that. I always say, and I've learned to say that prayer plus therapy is a winner. And
Absolutely.
so
Yes.
I think that we as a community, we have to push, and we have to push forward, and we have to use we stand on some powerful shoulders. We
Yes.
really do. And
Mhm.
so I am reminded of my ancestors. I
Yeah.
am reminded of my mother, who and my parents, because I
Yes.
come from parents who were sharecroppers, and
Mhm.
they picked cotton, and they pushed themselves to get out of where they began. And so
Mhm.
we have to begin to push,
Yes.
and and it does take a lot. And so it took a lot for our ancestors as well, but
Yeah.
we are here because of what they did. So we are afforded the opportunity to sit in front of a professional because
Mhm.
of what they planted for us and what
Yeah.
they intended for us to be healthier beings than
Yeah.
they were. They did not want us to have to experience all of
Mhm.
what they
They did.
experienced. And we don't.
Absolutely.
And we simply have to, it's not about, life happens, and it happens to all of us. And I think that is one of the things to take from this conversation, it is not
Yes.
about me, the therapist that has not experienced anything. It
Hmm.
is about me, the therapist that has experienced everything,
Everything.
or some of everything.
Yes.
And because I have experienced that, I can connect with you and
Yeah.
help you get to a different place. And so it is time for us to get up,
Yes.
and so that we have to get up and
Yes.
we have to do better. And even if we got to crawl, we
Yes.
still got to get up. And it
Yes.
does not, I wish I could tell you it's not going to hurt. I wish I could tell you the
Hmm.
pain is not going to hurt. I have been through lots of trauma that hurt the core of me. But
Right.
what I do know is that I had to push and to
Hmm.
get up. And when I was in that dark place and thought that it's no way I'm going to get out of this,
Hmm.
it was my faith in God that,
Yes.
and it wasn't my faith in that moment. It was the stored faith and the stored
Hmm.
prayers. It
Hmm.
wasn't the prayers that I was doing in that moment
Yes.
that brought me out of that. So my thing
Absolutely.
is get up,
Yes.
push.
I love that. That is our charge. That is our challenge, to understand that you can have God and a therapist, and to
Yes,
understand that it's a push. We have to push forward. The ancestors created this moment just for us, not to dwell in it, but to push forward in it. Sylvia, you always get me charged up. I'm ready to be in your space all the time. I really, really appreciate you being here today. Do you mind answering a few quick fire questions?
sure, sure.
Okay, ready? What's
Yeah,
your favorite juice?
my favorite juice. I think I recently found a favorite juice, and it's this blended juice with ginger,
Ooh,
cayenne pepper, and lemon.
ooh, that sounds good. That sounds really good. Tell me your favorite cookie. I know you're from South Carolina, so what's your favorite cookie?
I don't know that it's connected to South Carolina, but my favorite cookie is probably chocolate chip.
Oh my goodness. So my favorite cookie from South Carolina are those chewies. You know what a chewy is,
Yes,
right?
yes,
Oh,
yes. See, but I don't really think of a chewy as a cookie.
oh, you don't? Well, what is a chewy?
Because when my sister makes them, she's the queen of chewies. She
Yes.
makes it more like kind of like a brownie or something. And
Oh.
yeah, so I don't
Okay,
think of a
okay, okay.
chewy
I
as
can
a
see
cookie.
that. I can see that. I can see that. Chewies are so good. Anybody in South Carolina, find someone that makes chewies and like take care of that. What's your favorite cake?
My favorite cake, it's probably pound cake, but only my grandmother's pound cake. And
Oh.
unfortunately, she's not here anymore. But my grandmother's pound cake was my favorite.
Did you learn how to make it?
I
You
did,
did.
but I do.
Okay.
I think I've made it once. Yeah, but
I
no.
made my grandmother's pound cake maybe twice. I swear it took me all day. And I know it only took her a couple of hours. I
Yeah.
swear. I had to go take a nap and come back to it.
Yes.
Tell me, lastly, what was your favorite vacation? Where did you go and why did you enjoy it so much?
So my favorite vacation was South Africa.
Mhm.
And I just enjoy one. It's a beautiful country, but I enjoyed the history. It was the best experience ever. I hope to one day be able to do some work in South Africa. So yeah, by far South Africa.
All right. I love it. Thank you so much, Sylvia Pauling, for being here. I consider you to be a good friend and a mentor, and definitely my sister in the mental wellness for the culture. I appreciate you. We are reminded that perpetrators and survivors are in need of mental health support. It's very important that we support that process by encouraging them to be open to therapy. Try therapy. Just be open to the process and remember that professional mental health therapists, clinicians are available to support you in that process. Once again, thank you, Sylvia Pauling, and I'll talk to you soon. Good luck with your book.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. And thanks. Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye.